Apex Podcast. We live F1. Welcome to Missed Apex Podcast, brought to you by Apex Race Manager. Choose your race strategy, optimize your car, and race to win the championship. Today's episode is called Nando, Why You So Sad? I'm your host, Richard Spanners Ready, and I'm joined by Jake Sanson. How's it going, Jake?
I am doing really, really well, Spanners. Thank you so much for inviting me back on your show again.
Well, I know for a fact you have been to Monza, and I want your opinion on that because it's still something a little bit special, a festival of speed, and it's like the anti-Monaco for me.
It really has, yeah. I've not been in a professional capacity, but I have been in a fan capacity, and it is just such an incredible place to go. It's like a religion to the people in that part of the world, motor racing, and it's incredible just how people get involved in it. Amazing. It doesn't compare to anywhere else in the world.
They did seem like really passionate, and as Lewis said, it's almost like a football crowd with their passion, and you've got to admire that.
I suppose it is the closest to, a proper football crowd, and they really do love it. And from this year, particularly, with Liberty Media putting on a fantastic, karting thing on the main straight in front of all those football fans, oh man, that was just, I had to comment on it live when it was on Facebook Live. I just wrote very simply, Liberty Media, we love you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. It's just incredible. We need more of that stuff in F1.
They've definitely changed Formula One, and hopefully, long term, it's a good thing. And I was hinting really, really heavily to my wife, because it's my birthday on Wednesday, that she should send me on a surprise weekend to Monza to watch the Grand Prix. Unfortunately, instead, for my birthday, I got to take my kids to a theme park. Lucky me.
Yeah, I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I suppose it depends on how good a father you are.
Yeah, bad thing. Not very good dad.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
We are an independent podcast hosted by MissedApexPodcast.com. We aim to bring you a race review before your Monday morning commute. We might be wrong, but we're first. This show is safe for work. We keep it clean here, so you can play this with kids in the background or at work. We have some guests on this week. We have Chris Rainbow Sparkle Stevens. How's it going, Chris? Is he gone?
Oh, no, sorry. I had it muted. I'm so sorry.
We have Chris Rainbow Sparkle Stevens.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. You're a busy man and you nearly cried off because you were ill. Millennials, thinking everything is death.
Oh, excuse me for getting food poisoning at the weekend.
Too much information. Sorry about that live stream. Another pathetically young person alongside him is Ryan Ferret Ferris.
Yeah, I'm back finally. I mean, it has been a long time.
Now, you actually genuinely were ill and in hospital, so it's quite good to see you up and around. Welcome back, Ryan Ferris.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. It was very frustrating that I missed my last attempt at being on the podcast.
We'll let you off, not like Chris. Not just like Chris with the snivels or something like that. Actually in hospital with a wristband and everything. And looking after the podcast panel on the live stream, looking after the live stream today is a patron and quiz victor of last week, Nick Alexander. How you doing there, Nick?
Doing very well. And I think I've added that quiz victor line to my Twitter description.
That's fair.
I have to double check.
Yeah, you earned it, man. And you are going to be looking after the chat room for us today and picking out comment of the week for us. But you are a Ferrari fan. But even this week, you must have been considering becoming a Lewis Hamilton fan. He was that good.
No, I was actually considering becoming a Lance Stroll fan. Thought he did very well this weekend.
He did well for a little while, didn't he?
He did.
And a big hello to the live chat room. If you want to join the live chat, why not go to YouTube and search for Missed Apex Podcast, click subscribe, and then click the little bell on our profile. You'll get a notification every time we go live. Speaking of Lance Stroll, wow, Jake, that really was the standout of qualifying, wasn't it? To see the young Canadian starting from the front row of the grid. The front row.
Do you know what? We were down at Butmore Park this weekend and we caught the end of qualifying at the end of one of the practice sessions. And we looked at the front row of the grid and we said, oh, Lewis Hamilton's on pole. And we said to everybody in the paddock, guess who is on the front row with Lewis Hamilton, and I bet you will not be able to guess who's there. And literally everybody in the paddock is there going, Ocon? No. Close. Raikkonen? No. Vettel? No. Bottas? No. You genuinely couldn't make it up. It has to actually happen for it to be real. So it's great. You know, he put in a fantastic lap. It's the wet conditions, so you can't really tell whether that's his talent or he just happened to read a good lap in the right position. Even Williams came out at the end of qualifying and said, we don't know why we're quick. So, I don't know how much you read into it, but obviously it's really great, and it's another record broken. Youngest ever front row starter. He beat Verstappen's record by 23 days, which has basically made Max Verstappen incredibly angry. Why, yada? So, he's really, really irritated with Lance Stroll for taking the one of the records that he will never, ever lose, which is just lost. Which is quite funny because Lance Stroll took it off him. And that's the funniest joke of the whole weekend for me.
A very accurate Max Verstappen impression there.
Oh, yeah.
And I think you're selling him a little short because it wasn't just one lap he poked in at the end. He was consistently fast throughout qualifying.
Oh, yeah, he was consistently fast. But again, Williams have no idea why that is. So they haven't actually got any data that suggests why he should be at the front end or why Massa should be relatively close to him.
Hang on a minute.
I think the biggest thing...
Don't worry, Chris will know. Chris, why was he fast?
Because maybe he's actually talented and not the waste of space everybody thought that he was at the second he was signed up by Williams.
Oh, right. So one good qualifying. One good qualifying. And that's it.
Oh, no, not one good qualifying. A great qualifying where driving was, the standard. It wasn't about the car. It was about him. And he's had, a good part of the season now to develop. I mean, people expected him to come in and just be brilliant straight away. No, of course not. That's ridiculous. I think now we're starting to see the talent come through.
Yeah, it was always going to take time for him to get to a decent position, but I think this is an important weekend. It proves to him that he can be good in quali.
What's the chat room up to there, Nick?
Peter Goodchild is saying that Lewis Hamilton's driving is as otherworldly as his poetry.
Oh, no.
And Joshua Clare is confirming, I believe he was at the race. He says that the Tifosi were cheering every time they saw Ferrari all weekend. It was totally crazy.
All right, then let's get to Hamilton, Jake, because that's not just the car, is it? That is something special. You can say he's got the best car on the grid, and you can say that's one of the top downforce packages on the grid, but blowing away the field by more than a second and being very far ahead of his teammate, that was an incredible lap to become the all-time highest pole sitter.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And I'm getting a little bit fed up, actually, of watching all these keyboard warriors on social media basically saying, oh, well, the only reason Lewis Hamilton is winning things is because he's in the best car. Hello, Michael Schumacher got 68 pole positions because he was in the best car for him at the time. And that's how Ayrton Senna got all of his. That's how Alain Prost got all of his. Get over it. I think people are being ridiculously naive now to suggest that Lewis Hamilton isn't one of the greatest of all time. You just need to settle it with yourself. Get over it. Every driver that gets records and victories and pole positions in Formula One gets it with the best car. Dream on. You just kind of have to reason with yourself and go, he has to be one of the greatest. You don't get 69 pole positions in your career by accident. You certainly don't get 59 Formula One victories in your career by accident, which he now has. I think if you're still trying to suggest, oh, he's not one of the greatest of all time, I think you're just kidding yourselves. Get over it. He is.
Brian, I'm sure you've got something to say about that. Hamilton, greatest of all time.
He is definitely a far better race driver than he is poet and musician. Because
it was so bad.
Hats off to anyone who actually managed to survive the entire poem. I gave up after 2 lines, to be honest. But,
Ryan, I'll just stop you there because I read all of it, and there's probably not a bigger Lewis Hamilton fan than I on this panel, certainly, and that was terrible. But it's not just the terribleness of the poem or that someone would be moved to do such a thing. It's the fact is, if you're a millionaire, surely you can just hire a dude to totally proofread everything that you put out on social media. A lot of weird errors on that poem. Now, if you look at my social media, you'll know that I am not a fancy millionaire and I don't have anyone. My errors just go wild into the internet.
Yeah, well, what I'd like to go on from what Jake was saying is, I mean, Lewis is an awesome driver, but I'd like him to sort of see him do a Schumacher and go to a team that has still got potential of winning and sort of bring him back to winning ways.
You mean like did a Mercedes?
Yeah, I was just gonna say he did do that.
But no, he didn't. Yeah. He didn't really, because he moved to Mercedes knowing that they were going to have a good car when it came to the hybrid era. It wasn't sort of like he went there and sort of nursed the car to victory. It was sort of he went there knowing that they were going to have a good package come the hybrid era.
How did he know that? I mean, you never know until you actually get in the car and drive it and see how it goes in testing, and that was a year after he joined the team. I don't know, you can say that for definite.
It was fairly obvious. Everyone knew he's going to Mercedes because they're going to have a good package. Everyone knew they were going to have a good package come the hybrid era.
I don't know, you can argue that, because Ferrari and Renault had those engines coming in at the same time. I don't think you can argue that.
Okay, I don't want to stir this pot too much, but I think Hamilton had an idea of how the car would be because Niki Lauda was whispering sweet nothings in his ear.
What the chat room making of quali so far?
James Funnel says that Lance made quali look like a stroll in the park, and I always appreciate such a bad pun.
Oh, puns are great. The Red Bulls, though, Jake, were absolutely phenomenal. We were robbed of a great race, and who knows where that pace came from, because it was there in the dry, it was there in the wet. Sebastian Vettel loves telling people there's no real difference between the dry and the wet setup. A, what made Red Bull so special, and B, do you have a problem with these grid penalties?
Do you know what? I genuinely don't know the answer to your first question. I don't know why Red Bull was so strong. I think I've always said it's because of how good the chassis is, but that doesn't make up for the Renault engine, which is still a little bit deficient on power compared to Renault and Ferrari. So yeah, what kind of magical, mystical, dark powers has Adrian Newey been cooking with recently to make the Red Bull as good as it is? I think what that really showed for me is that why on earth hasn't Ferrari tried to get Daniel Ricciardo sooner? You know, Ricciardo is just such an incredible driver. He proved it again today. Ferrari are absolutely kidding themselves if they think they're going to win the Constructors' Championship with Kimi Räikkönen as partner to Vettel. It just ain't going to happen. In terms of, what was your second question? I just wanted to answer that one.
Grid penalties. I want to hear from you and Chris, because I'm not sure I see the big deal. I think we have a set of rules that says you have to have reliability and you have to have only 4 engines throughout the course of the season and parts thereof. Now, I don't agree with that rule. I think you could probably save money by having an engine formula that allowed you to have more engines. However, that is the rule. It's the same for everyone else. Therefore, if you don't want to take care and make an engine that is definitely going to last a quarter of the season, then you're going to get engine penalties. And it's the same for everyone.
I agree that there should be penalties, and if that's what the regulations state, you know, you have to run to through the season, then yes, you definitely should be given penalties. I don't think it should be race driver penalties for grids. I think it should be Constructors' Championship points. Okay, I think that's the way to do it.
Okay, but by that logic, then should the team still get the constructors' points every time the driver bins it in the wall? Because the driver was the one who made the mistake, but we'll give the team the points anyway because they did a good job. It was the driver who binned it. It's a team sport. You win and lose as a team. I agree with the concept of the engine penalties, but at the moment it's a little bit ridiculous.
And also, logistically, it won't work in that it relies on the teams caring about the championship table all throughout the season. So they could decide that getting their driver to win the title was more important than getting championship points, that they've already wrapped up a title or they're out of it. So I'm not quite sure how that works. I think the real problem is the regulation, and let's get rid of reliability, Jake, as such a major factor. It's not an endurance race. It's a 2-hour F1 sprint race.
Yeah, absolutely right. And you actually take the words right out of my mouth there. You know, the Formula One World Championship is trying too much to be the World Endurance Championship with this regulation. It isn't the World Endurance Championship. You know, it should be about pushing the car to the extremes. That was the gold point of the 90s when you had, you know, Schumacher, Hill, Alesi, Berger, Hakkinen pushing it absolutely to the limit, and the car would just die. The engine would blow. And that was amazing. You know, I do feel that, you know, if you punish a driver when an engine blows, you know, how much can you actually penalise them for it? But then I don't know what the answer is either.
Well, then let's see if Ryan does know.
I think what they should do is they should find the engine supplier. So every time an engine goes that is supplied by, say, Mercedes or Honda, I mean, they'd have a huge bill. But every time, say, a Honda engines goes, Honda get the bill. They get a fine because their engine isn't performing to what it should be doing.
Christopher Fonseca in the chat room is suggesting that grid penalties should be enforced by distance. That way Alonso could start at the front of the grid,
Yes.
but on lap -1.
I like that because everyone makes that joke every single race of, oh, looks like they're going to be starting from name nearest town. So yeah, why not make it actually by distance? And it was interesting that with so many people getting grid penalties, you actually could not work it out yourself because it was based on if someone had level grid penalties, it was based on when they went out in practice. So the Red Bulls made sure they were the first car out in FP1 just so that if they had equal points with anyone, they would still start ahead. Of course, that didn't help Ricciardo at the start of the race. And your boys as well there, Nick, they compromised their setup somewhat. Perhaps, I think people were saying they trimmed downforce to try and help them on those Monza straights. Of course, that would have murdered them in qualifying.
Right. And I think that may be what happened. I mean, they did not have the best qualifying by any stretch of the imagination. If you were a casual observer and you were watching in Q2, which was amazing in the changing conditions, you may have thought for 10, 15 minutes there that Vettel was actually on it, but it was actually that he was just moving to the top of the timesheets because the track was drying.
And I love watching that. And this is where, Ryan, we really miss someone like Murray Walker to get really, really excited before someone calmly lays out what's actually going on.
Well, yeah, it would generally be he'd be getting excited, generally over watching a replay, thinking it was live. But yeah, qualifying was just ridiculous. One thing we also learned is this weekend is that Haas drivers I think it's just the Haas. Being in Haas makes you a very angry person.
I wouldn't disagree with that. And one fantastic comment was from Red Bull's Helmut Marko, Jake. Is that what you're about to come at me with?
It wasn't. I was just going to comment the fact that Haas is a NASCAR team, in essence. So basically, their racing drivers are behaving like NASCAR drivers. Is that an unfair comment? I don't know.
Well, I'm going to say yes, it is an unfair comment. But
Okay,
Helmut
excellent.
Marko came out and said, I can't believe they've stopped qualifying just because Grosjean fell off. Grosjean falls off all the time. All right, let's go to the race. Well, normally this is the part where Matt tells us where the race was won and lost, but I guess we're just going to have to struggle on by. There was a few distinct races on the track today, Chris. It wasn't particularly explosive, but it was fascinating to watch the various battles unfold. Basically, we had Mercedes versus Vettel. We had Kimi Raikkonen, Ocon, Stroll for a lot of that race. We had the Williams versus Force India championship battle. And then we had the Red Bulls at the back versus the midfield.
Yeah, it was actually a really interesting race from my point of view. A lot of fans have been saying it's one of the dullest races they've ever seen. Really? I do not agree with such a sentiment. That's all the ones I've seen anyway. But I'll tell you what, I'll do Matt's job and tell you exactly where the race was won. And it was won in qualifying, basically. As soon as Lewis bagged pole position and had the likes of Stroll and Ocon between him and his championship rivals, then really that was his race. It was always going to take them a few laps for Bottas and Vettel to come by them. And by that time, Lewis had already got a nice gap. So that was pretty much...
exactly. I think by the time Vettel had gotten through the Strolls and the Ocons and his own teammate, somehow he managed to get past Kimi, heroic overtaking manoeuvre into the second chicane. No, Kimi very much let him through once he was unable to get past Bottas. But once Vettel got through...
That was the legitimate fake move I've ever seen.
Actually, I thought he was going to hold him off at one point before they went into Lesmo's 1-2. But then he did get past eventually. But the gap was 8 seconds to the Mercedes by the time that was all over. So even if they'd have had the pace, it would have been easy enough, I think, for the Mercedes to have managed that pace. Go on, Ryan, get in.
Yeah, and, I was amazed to see Kimi actually genuinely defending his position. The only reason he lost that position was because he messed up the exit of the chicane. But yeah, the race was won and lost in qualifying because of Lewis's godlike talent in the wet. Because I think if Bottas started second, then it possibly might have been another story.
Go on, continue, Chris.
Yeah, Ferrari really dropped the ball, and they've admitted as much. I think the word Marchioni used was screwed up, because they were really struggling with the setup on Friday. And crucially, they lost Saturday morning to try and work out those problems because it was rained off. And so that's what they're pretty much putting down a lot of their issues to. And especially Sebastian Vettel. This was never caught on the cameras, but Seb Vettel went off at the first chicane, went through the escape road, and he said that he did some damage to his steering in the process, and he was not able to trust the car, especially on the brakes, which is especially crucial around Monza. You got 2 or 3 of your biggest braking zones of the season there, and so that'd be why we ended up with the massive half-minute gap between Mercedes and Ferrari in this race. So I think that the results on paper are a little bit skewed.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm not sure why we're too surprised that Ferrari were off the pace compared to Mercedes this weekend, because we always knew that it was going to come down to power, which is something that Mercedes have got in buckets, whereas Ferrari were always going to struggle. But considering that, Ferrari were actually nowhere near as bad as I expected they were going to be. I mean, Vettel was only, 7 seconds behind the Mercedes at the finish. So to be fair to Ferrari, they've actually saved their bacon a little bit there by bringing their cars home in 3rd position and I think 5th as well with the other one, Raikkonen. So they've actually saved themselves an awful lot of hassle. I thought they were going to be worse than they were. So fair play to Ferrari for saving it.
Nah, it couldn't have been worse. That was a huge mental blow for Mercedes. And in the green room at the end, Vettel saying, "You weren't pushing, were you?" It's like, no, we weren't pushing. And we were 36 seconds ahead of you. And we turned, I think it was lap 20 that they turned the power down. I think that is a huge mental blow, even if that is not particularly a Ferrari circuit.
But they were still third, I mean, even up to the point when they turned the engines down, they were still third. They were still beating everybody else. So at the end of the day, in the championship fight that they're currently in, as long as they're finishing behind the Mercedes, okay, they finished half a minute behind them at Monza, but they still scored the same amount of points if they were just sat behind them in a normal racing situation. They still, in terms of the championship, they didn't do too bad there.
Which championship, though? Because Ferrari want that driver title, and it will have been a blow to see if Mercedes stretch out that advantage to the point where Bottas can be ahead of Vettel as well. That harms Vettel's chances a lot. Nick, what's going on in the chat? You are getting my attention.
Yep. So just as a second place for Ferrari was practically a win at Spa, Joshua Clare in the chat room says that the Ferrari is clearly the better car because they were only 32 seconds behind Mercedes at Monza.
Wow. Now that is some next level fanboyism. I'm going to give him the credit of thinking he's joking. But yes, we gave Ferrari the win last week for being nearly there. That's good enough. And this week we can say, yeah, they've salvaged some kind of victory from only being 36 seconds behind a Mercedes car that has turned its engine down, Chris.
But Spanners, is it really surprising that the team with the best engine on the grid won at the 2 most power-sensitive circuits of the season?
No, not at all. That margin of victory is somewhat disappointing.
So when we go to the next few tracks like Singapore, Japan, all the rest of the season that we've got going on ahead, because people are looking at these last 2 races and thinking that Mercedes are going to pretty much dominate the end of the season now. And I just cannot see that happening whatsoever, because this is still very much, there's still a pendulum swinging in this championship.
There is. And I think that definitely you're right about Singapore. We are probably going to see a pendulum swing back there. But again, you see, when they are close somewhere, as I believe they will be in Singapore, if Ferrari are off their game and Mercedes are on it, then Mercedes will pick up the win or split the Ferraris. Whereas here, there was nothing. Ferrari were completely helpless to do anything. We don't even know if Mercedes had a good race, to be fair.
Yeah, and with Singapore, it's one of those odd circuits. 'Cause obviously, it's a street circuit, so we can see Red Bull coming into play because Ricciardo was very close to the victory last season. So yeah, we could definitely see Red Bull up there, and who knows? We might see a very happy McLaren up there, but I very much doubt that. For McLaren, they'll probably get affected by the tram or the train going underneath the track and like losing gears and stuff. But
now, listen in next Sunday if you're a McLaren fan and want to know about their future. We have a lawyer coming on to talk to us, and if an announcement has not been made midweek, I think you will find that very, very interesting. If not, we will be able to do a good analysis of any news that comes out of the McLaren engine story. All right, let's move on a little bit, Chris, because that wasn't the only race and the only battle that was going on in this field. There was a great scrap behind them between the two rookies and Kimi Räikkönen.
Yeah, it was a good one, wasn't it? And it ultimately ended up being the Williams Force India battle as well. Frankly, I'm surprised it took Kimi so long to get past those two. But if you go back what we're saying, Ferrari struggling with the setup, Mercedes best engine, then yeah, actually maybe that does add up a little bit better. But I'm very impressed with what Esteban and Lance did today. They were way out of position, and they both came home with two very strong results.
Okay, well, let's talk about Stroll, because he was told, apparently, by Williams, don't worry, just go for it at the start. And I think Williams would have absolutely loved to have seen their car ahead, going off and disappearing into the back end of the Monza circuit, even if it was only temporary. And, of course, that would have meant that he was less vulnerable to Ocon, who he probably could have held off had he got ahead. But as it turns out, he was actually very cautious, Jake, into that turn one. And I bet it was in his mind, which was, you've done really well here. Don't ruin it by being the thing that is a big championship decider, i.e. taking out Lewis Hamilton into turn one.
Yeah, I think if we were talking about him in his third or fourth season, he would so have gone for it. He would so have gone, do you know what? I am going to chuck it down the inside and see what happens. But to be fair, a lot of people have criticised him for driving erratically, for not reading a situation very sensibly, considering that he only lost one place into the first corner and lost it to Ocon, who he could actually have a decent race with and did. I think he handled himself very well in the situation. And to be honest, it's more of an argument to suggest that he's actually growing in maturity and stature than not capable of being a Formula One driver. I think he really impressed this weekend, to be fair. And okay, he fell back, but he was always going to. The fact that he didn't do it as fast as he did, he actually gave it some good gusto. I was really impressed, to be fair.
Well, the thing is, his initial getaway was actually pretty good. He was actually pulling up alongside Hamilton, but then obviously Hamilton then covered him off. And
he did the Schumacher switch, didn't he? He did the Schumacher slide.
He was, fair enough to him. As much as I wanted to see him go wheel to wheel with Hamilton through the first corner, yes, he wouldn't have come off on top. Hamilton would have, but I think fair enough. Keep the thing intact.
Absolutely, I think that's the best he could have done in that situation, and we actually really got to see him racing right up front. But Chris, once Kimi lost the opportunity to get past Bottas, he really, really had to concede that position, and he fell into that battle as well. And wasn't it strange seeing Sebastian Vettel cut through those guys as if they weren't there, yet just so disappointingly for his massive deluded fans, he couldn't do the same thing?
I suppose it does call into question a little bit Kimi's ability, but Seb's always been maybe one of those guys that can handle a less than perfect car more so than Kimi. I mean, we know one of Kimi's biggest struggles over the last few years is that the car just hasn't been quite attuned to his suiting, and maybe that was more of an impact today than ever.
Oh, the Kimi thing is absolutely hilarious. Ferrari re-signing him and then him doing this today is a bit like having, an aging lawyer at one of the big Chicago law firms. You just re-sign him for another 5 years on the board, and then he just spends the next 6 months, wandering around in his underwear in the office, looking absolutely disgraceful. I can't believe Ferrari are sticking with him. I just cannot believe it. It's not possible to win the Constructors' Championship with Kimi Räikkönen on your team.
Well,
Forget about it. Forget about it.
I'll tell you what, though, Nick. When they re-signed Vettel and said a 3-year deal, all I was thinking was, oh, Kimi will be 40 by then.
Yeah, hopefully they'll find another suitable number 2 driver for the back 2 years of that contract. Matt Trumpets has showed up in the chat room, which is kind of derailing things. People are asking him where the race was won and lost. And Baja has made a very good point that Red Bull has saved Ferrari from having an even more embarrassing weekend by getting grid penalties and getting out of the way at the start.
Absolutely. Okay, then. Well, let's move on then, because Kimi tried the undercut, Chris, which is damning in itself that he needed that undercut to get past the guys that his teammates sliced through as if they weren't there. And it worked a little bit because Stroll, uncharacteristically for Williams, had a poor stop that put him out behind Kimi Raikkonen and to the back of that little train.
Yeah, I mean, when you're stuck behind a car for so long, you run out of options other than to pull the trigger on the strategy. And that's exactly what Ferrari did. It's what they've been quite good at this season. And, it did work. It got him ahead of one car and he managed to get the job done on the other.
And if nothing else, it told them how the harder tyre was going to function. So basically, we've reduced Kimi Raikkonen's role to in-race tyre tester for Sebastian Vettel.
Well, they kind of knew that the soft tyre was going to be working quite well because it did perform very well during Friday practice, and we had seen both the Red Bulls doing quite well at the start of the race on the soft tyre. I say both the Red Bulls, Daniel Ricciardo and Max Verstappen before he got his puncture.
I would argue that Kimi has not been reduced to the role of in-race tyre tester for Seb because he's already been doing that role for the last year or two at least. He always has been the person to get the second strategy, so to speak.
Well, to start with, what they started doing was pitting him first or leaving him out a really long time to block their rivals before, once they'd made their pit stop. He'd fall behind the early battle and say they'd leave him out and have him sat there for Lewis Hamilton as he came out of the pit to slow him down for a lap or two. But now he can't do that because he failed to do that completely in Spa. Now he's been reduced to just finding any kind of useful space. And I really do fear that his lack of pace is going to make him useless towards the end of this season. And I dread to think what it's going to be like next season.
Would it be possible at all to replace him next season? Should it get really dreadful?
Well, who knows? Who knows? You're going to have the young Leclerc in a Sauber, hungry, and perhaps if we can see him prove himself, the summer might be a good time for the Finn to take an early retirement from Formula One. Sorry, Kimi Raikkonen fans, but even you guys must be now thinking how much better it would be if you could just remember his career, as it was, and not going off the same cliff that Massa seems to have gone off. Okay, so we've lost about 1,000 listeners a week there. What about the Red Bull battle versus the rest of the field? You could say Max Verstappen, Chris, has been very, very unlucky. But, and I'm going to lose our Dutch audience now, he's not helped himself this week. And there are still question marks, I think, over his very aggressive driver style. He obviously takes a gamble. And sometimes that isn't going to pay off.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, first lap, astonishing. Made fantastic progress through the field and was pretty much looking at a P4 finish. And you'd have to say if he'd have done Ricciardo's strategy, maybe he would have been the one ending up on the podium. But that move he put on Massa, I think he maybe took an unnecessary risk.
We'll find out in whose fault is this, Ryan.
Well, that's the thing. Obviously, Verstappen is ridiculously quick and he is definitely hugely talented, but this is where he falls shy of Ricciardo, is that he's not a reliable driver in the sense that he will put the car on the line, but then he'll end up doing something that involves losing the front wing, where Ricciardo won't do that sort of thing.
Yep, I think that's a fair assessment. And yes, please feel free always to email me at spannersready@gmail.com. I love having email conversations with you guys. If you don't want to come at me publicly on Twitter, you can do at spannersready, and the show at Missed Apex F1. I always love hearing about your opinions. So just to finish off that little series of battles we were looking at, Chris, Stroll, ultimately, he had the pace, I think, today, but he lacked the aggression. You saw him stick his nose out, and then he just go, nah. And I think you could just see him thinking, take the points, take the points, take the points.
I agree. I mean, he was lined up for a great finish today, no matter what happened. So long as he kept it on the black stuff, then he was going to come away with a really strong finish. And I just think he didn't want to take any unnecessary risks. And I think he's right to do so, because he has, had a few incidents here and there, and that's all down to confidence, basically, and that will come with time. And we're already seeing that develop across the season, and I think it's only going to get better and better for him.
Baja in the chat room is pointing out that Max lives by the famous Senna quote: "If there is a space, he goes for it." And Anders says that it was Massa who was all over the place today, and I think I might agree with that. I think Max might be a little bit overly aggressive in general, but that maybe today it was not his fault.
Well, we'll get to whose fault is this, Jake.
I was just going to say, well done to Felipe Massa for looking like a Formula E driver today, because that's what he wants to do when Formula One finishes for him. So, yeah, he was doing a great audition of it today, wasn't he? He was everywhere, all over the place.
He features
Chris
twice.
Stevens resembles that remark.
Yeah, he features twice in the Whose Fault Is This section. So, yeah. And speaking of Chris Stevens... Chris, I know I sometimes give you a bit of a hard time, but that's because you're pathetically young and terrible at go-karting. However, your career is looking half decent. How are things going at your end?
Pretty well, I'd say, at the moment. I am back on Autosport duties at the weekend. I'm going to Rockingham, another circuit that I'm making a first-time visit to with the 750 Motor Club once again. It's my last official Nat Rep gig with Autosport this year, for the moment anyway. Then something might pop up. You never know, but at the moment, yeah, this is going to be my last one of the year.
Is that because you're not good enough and they've decided not to keep you on, or what?
It's because they've got someone far better and more experienced than me to do the final 2 rounds. No, it's fine. It's also there's a lot of factors involved, mainly like things like costs and logistics as well, because some of these other tracks, they're in very hard to reach places.
Fair enough. So I think it's worth noting to anyone who's listening that Chris Stevens is young and therefore will work for very, very little. Please consider him for your reporting gigs. Is that fair to say, Chris? You'd pretty much work for sandwiches at this point.
I'll take anything. No, I mean... No, that makes me sound desperate. No.
Well, it is, and until you get to the stature of the likes of Jake Stevens, wow, I've gone mad there. I might even take a note of that one,
How could you insult Jake like that?
I know, it's bad. Until you get to the lofty ranks of people like Jake Sanson. What are you up to, Jake?
I thought you were going to say, it's really harsh to criticize Chris Stevens like that. He's way sexier than me. Anyway, I have been on the commentary trail this weekend. I've been down at Butmore Park in Kent with the Birrell UK karting series. We had our 6th round of the championship, and we had most of the championships ending up getting a lot closer, because Butmore Park is a bit like wrestling for cars. It's really, really tough to go around the circuit. And I actually drove a 125cc Birrell UK Series kart yesterday, and it was literally like being shot out of a cannon. It's ridiculously fast. If you think the Daytona D-Max karts are fast, these things are like 3 times as fast. It's insane how quick the acceleration is.
And they let you loose in one of those things. Firstly, that poor kart. And secondly,
Yes.
Did you actually manage to keep it pointing forwards?
You're going to giggle, because Ken Churchill, one of the drivers, actually let me drive the kart, so it had nothing to do with the championship organisers. And to be fair, it was so fast, and I couldn't quite fit in the seat because my bum's quite big, and I couldn't quite feel the skill of it all. I lasted a lap and a half before my rib said, if you push this, I will snap in half. So don't do it. So I only managed about a lap and a half at every one time. I was embarrassingly poor, and there will be much ribbing of me on Facebook in the morning.
Oh, how I wish there was video. All right, let's move on to my favourite bit of the show. Whose fault is it? This section and this week's podcast is brought to you by Apex Race Manager. It's an exciting and challenging Formula One race strategy game available on Android and iOS. You don't drive the car, you make decisions about pitting in race, tyre choice, driver aggression. You can balance the fuel use with your lap times. You choose your strategy, you optimize your car, and you race to win the championship. The guys who made Apex Race Manager, who are our podcast partners this week, gave me a code because it is a free-to-play game. You get a season free, and you can then pay £4 for the full pro version. Otherwise, the season's just reset. But buying the full version lets you go a full season. And I have to say, this has become my new equivalent to what I used to do in the olden days, when everyone used to nip outside and have a cheeky spark up to kill 5 minutes. This has become my current go-to Android app to have a quick little break from work. It's remarkably engaging. Now, I haven't tried the other version of this game that has 24 quid, because I don't have 24 quid. I had £4, and it was £4 well spent. I used to waste hours and hours and hours on the old Football Championship Manager, and this very much reminded me of that. Because at first I was thinking, you're not racing the car, so what possible thrill could you get about watching your car until you start to see people starting to overtake you and get past you, and you think, oh, not Ocon. Oh, surely Ocon's not getting past me in this situation. And then you whack the aggression up, and he ends up spinning off into the screen. But anyway, this is a game that has kept me engaged, and I think basically having a free 1-season trial before committing to the £4 version of the full game is about right. If you don't like this game after 1 season and you don't want to continue your career, fair enough, that's not the game for you. But I think that you've had a good long look at it, and once you pay your £4, that's absolutely it. So yes, I can recommend go and check out Apex Race Manager on Android or iOS. Now, I actually have a few codes to give away for that full pro version. So why don't you, if you want to win those, tweet me using the hashtag MissedApexManager, because of the nice coincidence between the app and this podcast name. Hashtag MissedApexManager, and tell me, who is your least favourite member of the Missed Apex panel? No explanation required. Just tell me who is your least favourite person that appears on this show. That's Apex Race Manager, available on iOS and Android.
Whose fault is it?
Jake's hiding in his hoodie. He's got a suspicion it's going to be him. All right, so whose fault is this? Lap 3, Max Verstappen was on the outside with Felipe Massa coming in down turn 1. Chris Stevens, why don't you lead us off with this? Who do you think is to blame? It's a chicane. The guy on the inside took both apexes, basically.
You're not going to like me for this. It was both of their faults.
No. Hang on a minute. No, I don't mind that. I don't like it when they go, oh, it's just a racing incident. It's no one's fault, really. If you want to apportion significant and humiliating blame to both of them, I could sort of get on board with that.
Okay, I'm going to both say that they did. Felipe had every right to shove Max off the track because it's his corner. And Max, at the same time, it was a move he could well have made if Massa had given him the space. But then at the same time, I think maybe he should have backed out of it once he realised what Felipe was doing. Felipe locked up as well. So again, you could say that was a mistake on his part. But I think Max was taking an unnecessary risk. After making a really strong start, he didn't have to take a risk like that so early into the Grand Prix.
Jake, do you have an opinion on that? Oh, Ryan. No, who are you waving at, Ryan? You waving at Jake to wake him up?
I was waving at Jake to wake up. Usually it's me that's got to wake up, but Do
you know what? I'm going to forgive Jake because he was tippy-tapping away in the chat room. Listener engagement, we don't mind that.
Difficult. Massa was being a bit ridiculous all over the place today, but then so was Verstappen. Can we just slap the pair of them and tell them both to get on with it?
No, you have to assign blame. That's the whole point.
Oh, okay. Verstappen. I'm sorry, but Verstappen really should be backing out of a chicane like that. I'm really sorry. But yeah, he should. I'm sorry,
Spanners is applying makeup to himself.
Yes.
Just in the T-zones.
Okay.
In the teaser. He even knows.
No, you have to understand this about Spanners. Not only does he know what T-zones are, he's a major musical fan. I outed him on Pitboard. I totally did.
But so am I. But I'm sorry. I think you're the sparkle here now, Spanners.
Yeah.
Spanners sparkle.
No, he's applying the powder so that he doesn't sparkle.
It's all for you, live stream.
Light coming in and doing it
So
for
he
him.
doesn't look like a ghost on stage.
It's not a stage, it's a virtual live stream. But I have an opinion on this because this move is very similar to the one I pulled on our patron, Manny Gonzalez, when we went go-karting at Daytona. And the fact is, people treat the chicane like two corners, where really, realistically, I think you need to treat it as one, with turn 2 being the exit of that first turn. Now, I would say that because what happened is I went up the inside of Manny on the first part of the chicane, just as Massa did. And that's the thing. If you are going to make that move, you've got to outbrake the car on the outside. If you outbrake the car on the outside, it's very, very difficult to then go all the way round the outside of that second turn. You've basically got to say, if that inside overtaking car has to go all the way around on turn 2, then you may as well outlaw that kind of maneuver altogether. Otherwise, Chris, I think I agree with you. The corner was Massa's, and Verstappen just wouldn't give it up.
Yeah, but at the same time, he probably shouldn't have done. I think Massa locking up and getting too deep into the corner complicated matters there. Had he been able to just make the corner, then that incident would not have happened.
Massa made the corner.
Massa made the corner, but if he hadn't have gone deep into the corner is what I'm trying to say. Had he made it properly.
Okay, but is he obliged to take the second turn in any particular way? And once he's got past on that first turn, he's not then obliged to take a very wide line into turn 2.
Well, if he had Max still alongside him, he would have had to have left him space. But you can, between apexes, just give him a little nudge.
What are the chat room making of that incident, Nick? And in fact, what do you make of it?
There is not a lot going on in the chat room about the incident. They're mostly talking about Doctor Who.
Is
but
that
I do
Hannah
have
Hassel
one vote for
making-
Massa, one vote for racing incident, and Hannah Hassel says that she was eating food and didn't see it.
Well, I mean, that's a valid opinion as any. So, Ryan, I think you're going to agree with this that it was completely Verstappen's fault.
Yeah, because I think saying I think both were to blame is effectively looking in the thesaurus and saying I think it's a racing incident. But yeah, I think it was Verstappen's fault because there wasn't really, the gap was always disappearing. But I mean, fair play for having a go, but at that certain opportunity, there wasn't much of an opportunity there.
No, fair enough. I think I agree with that. A very similar battle was the Alonso-Palmer battle, and this got really, really intense. Who wants to kick us off with what on earth was going on with Alonso and Palmer?
Right, can I kick this off?
Yes.
Because if you'll notice that Palmer was given a 5-second penalty for the incident.
It's ridiculous. Only 5 seconds. Ridiculous.
Well, it is ridiculous. What did it achieve? Nothing. It achieved nothing. Palmer made an illegal move on Alonso and he got to keep it. Because he pulls away 5 seconds and then the penalty is null and void. It might cost him later in the race, but Alonso's race is still being affected by that. And so I don't know why you can't just say to him, give him the place back.
Well, yeah, I think it was a bit stupid, the fact that, I mean, if it was Palmer had overtaken Alonso and then made up another position, then 5 seconds, yeah, but they were still, the places with each other. Palmer should have given it back. But I think, Alonso were going off on the radio. I think that's because, as Hannah Hassel keeps alluding to, Alonso has a button for the Honda complaint hotline. But I think they're very much like British Telecom in the fact that they've put him on hold for 3 years. So he's given up and now trying to find something else.
Hannah Hassel in the chat room suggests that this spat actually began with the parade lap in which Alonso's car broke down and he had to hitch a ride with Palmer.
I've got this weird conspiracy theory regarding the Palmer Renault thing. Am I allowed to share it?
Yes.
I've got a very, very weird conspiracy theory. The whole thing with the Jolyon Palmer thing is actually really, really lucrative to Renault F1 and the Renault brand in the UK because of the whole Renault Sport. You know, anytime there's a new Renault Sport brand like the Clio Cup Junior or their new Renault sports car that they're trying to develop for 2019, they do all the testing secretly at MSV tracks, which of course Jonathan Palmer owns. So things like Bedford Autodrome in Great Britain, and they've got that new French one, Rian Auton or whatever it's called. They're doing stuff over there. And I think you'll find very, very sneakily that Jolyon Palmer will be ousted from the Renault F1 team probably the end of this year to do something with the Renault program. He'll probably end up there as their reserve driver or something next year. And you'll be suddenly very, very surprised to hear that Will Palmer, the younger brother, is suddenly part of the Renault Young Drivers Academy. How did that happen? I have no idea at all. And then eventually in about 2022, he'll end up as their driver as well. I think this is a long-term game plan.
Fascinating and nearly on topic, but not nearly at all. Back to the Alonso Palmer incident. I actually don't think that rule is too far off. I mean, what do you want them to do? Do you want to follow Alonso's lead, Chris, and basically hang the bloke? I mean, 5 seconds, it gets you back in touch. I think if he had not built that 5 second gap and put Alonso ahead, I mean, Alonso wasn't going to pass on track. So that 5 seconds was actually his only chance of getting the place back. And he would have just been repassed anyway had Palmer been put behind him.
But we have to, we can't just assume that all incidents like that are going to be exactly the same. You have to have a rule that fits everyone. So the rule that you apply to Alonso and Palmer in their dodgy McLaren has got to be it applied in the exact same way if it happened between Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel. So if you remember back to Monaco when one of the was it Verline who was unsafely released into the path of Button and he got a 5 second penalty for it. But what did that solve? They weren't going to serve any more pit stops, and it just gave them the position. Button's still stuck behind him, and this is exactly the same scenario. Alonso is still behind Palmer, who illegally took a position. To answer your question, by the way, Spanners, it is 100% Palmer's fault.
Oh, yeah, there was a question. You think it's 100% Palmer's fault, even though we kind of decided that Verstappen was... So it's the guy on the outside of these chicanes. He has to yield, really.
Tough. No, it's tough. I mean, Alonso basically played the move that Massa played, but a little bit more deliberately in that he just shoved Palmer off the racetrack, but then Palmer went and took it into his own hands to just overtake him off the track, which he shouldn't have done.
I've got an opinion on Alonso's position he's found himself in today. Would anyone like to hear it?
Oh, yes, do it.
Okay, here we go. This is what I think. Nando, you're driving slow. Take a bad car and make it better. You could have been in a Ferrari today, but you messed up. Now you're in a Honda. Nando, don't be so mad. Don't take your anger out on Palmer. Just leave it, let Karma do her thing, and hope Karma's forgotten Fernando Alonso. Oh, the irony of Fernando Alonso talking about Karma.
Where's the verse? Where's the verse? We needed more.
I felt like you'd had enough. But come on, Jake. The irony of a man who has had the most unlucky series of contracts that he's accepted and contracts that he's rejected, talking loudly on TV about karma.
It's quite funny, really, isn't it? I mean, Fernando Alonso and karma is quite a funny joke in and of itself. I just point you directly in the direction of 2008 Singapore. Hello, karma. Yeah, it's a bitch, isn't it? I don't know. It's a very, very funny. I need to redo that without that word, don't I? I've suddenly
No,
realised.
I will just beep you out. Everyone has heard your beep of shame who is
Okay,
listening
that's
to
fine.
this podcast.
That's the first time I've ever beeped on your show. I'm terribly, terribly sorry. So yeah, it's quite funny. Fernando Alonso behaving like a child. When haven't we seen that before? Oh yes.
Oh, by the
so,
way,
yeah.
a full credit for the idea of that cover goes to Paul Wright in our Patreon group. And just say, in general, the Patreon group helps me out so much in our Slack group with just like, hey, Spanners, that tweet you just did doesn't even read as any language. So we hope it's not English. Oh, Spanners, your website has fallen to bits. And in fact, one of the patrons has just taken over and just gone, your website is so bad, I'm just going to do it for you. So the Missed Apex podcast is now completely patron run. And also just day to day talking about F1. The dream is always you find a forum, then it gets toxic, or it's Twitter, or it's upsetting and stressful. And for some reason in there, with about 70 guys in there, it is never stressful. And it's the best place in the world to talk about Formula One. So thank you very much.
And one girl.
And there's actually 2 ladies in there. So, yeah, thank you very much to you guys. You do make being an F1 fan much more enjoyable. I absolutely appreciate that. All right, so there was a couple of other incidents, because Max Chris also had a little bit of a run-in with Kevin Magnussen, and he wasn't very happy. Now, this isn't really an incident as such. It's just that I thought we'd established that you can't move in the braking zone now. This was Max's go-to move that was banned. They made a rule to stop him doing it, and he clearly, in the braking zone, chopped across to the outside and cut Kevin Magnussen off.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused by what happened. First of all, it was just the most unnecessary thing to have happened all year. And I really don't know what Max was expecting there, because Kevin was always going to be able to brake later into that corner.
Yeah, well, I was under the impression that for some reason the FIA decided to get rid of the rule, the Verstappen rule as it was dubbed. I don't know if it was the start of this season, just out of the blue. And yeah, I think where what Verstappen did was a bit silly. Magnussen wasn't alongside or had any portion of his car alongside Verstappen when he moved over. So I felt that Verstappen was well within his right to move over anyway. So, you know, it's another Haas driver just having a whinge because he's in a Haas, effectively.
Cool. And then we had, unbelievably, the Williams cars kind of coming together and having a scrap at the end, Chris. My question would be, why? Why did that happen?
Because they've been staring at the back of each other for half a race, and they know it's the last lap. And that's what I like about Formula One at the moment. Yeah, it's quite hard to pass. So you spend half your Grand Prix lining up an overtake. It means it's proper. Yeah, but Jake, it's team points. Their nearest rivals were breathing down their neck in the form of Ocon. Like, why wasn't someone on the radio going, stop, just stop?
No, I think they obviously saw what happened to Force India at Spa, and they basically had the Crocodile Dundee philosophy. You call that a collision? Now this is a collision. They obviously decided, inter-team politics were not dodgy enough between Massa and Stroll. Let's give them something to talk about.
Basically, hold my martini is what the Williams boys said.
Exactly. Yeah. It's quite funny because I don't think either of them really knew that neither of them was going to concede a position or space to them. It was quite funny. It's like, well, I'm going to go. No. Oh, you actually hit me. You twit. What on earth are you playing at? And it was quite funny that the Force Indias very nearly benefited. It was very amusing.
I'm going to beep that to make it sound like you said a rude word, even though you didn't.
I didn't. You're going to make me out to be a very, very shouty, sweary bloke, and I'm really not, Mother. I'm really not.
You know who's the worst for it after a beer is Ryan Ferris. Ryan, why don't you tell us what you're up to at the moment and where people can find you online?
You can find me, apart from in the dungeon that is my bedroom. You can find me on Twitter at Ferret115. That is IT, not ET.
Excellent. And let's catch up with new boy Nick Alexander. How have you found the experience of looking after our chat room or our shed? How have you found being Shedhead?
I found it kind of cross-eyed, like, because I'm trying to look at you for cues, and I'm trying to look over for the room, and there's some crazy tangents going on about Doctor Who and food and all that kind of stuff. I think I'm doing my best.
Fantastic. Well, it's an absolute.
We'll find out when you get your Apex manager votes.
Absolutely. Oh, you can totally vote for Nick in
Or don't.
Well, I'm just saying you could do. It's an option. So use the hashtag Missed Apex Manager, and we will randomly, it has to be said, pick 5. I think I've got 5 codes. So if you win that, I'll message you and tell me whether you're iOS or Android. Jake is actually spelled in the traditional way, Jake. Just for reference, in case you need that. All right then. So where should we go? Oh, the podium. Wow. Now then, we've had a lot of people complaining about booing. Last season, Nico Rosberg got booed a lot. When I've been at Silverstone and I've been anywhere near Sebastian Vettel, I have also booed a lot. Sorry, Nick. I see it as pantomime. I see it as part of any sport. And if it's for sporting reasons, then I don't really see a problem with it. And in fact, it can add, in my opinion, to the atmosphere of an event. Now, there's the kind of booing and jeering that, say, the Spanish football team fans do to certain England players, which wouldn't be acceptable. But what we saw at Monza today, I don't think that's what that was, Jake. This was purely sporting booing. It was pantomime at its best, and Lewis Hamilton responded fantastically.
Yeah, it was the ultimate, return of serve, to coin a tennis phrase. He absolutely knocked it out of the park. And to be fair to him, he took it in very good sport, which I have to say, it was difficult really to watch that bit, because you have to consider the fact that a day earlier he had taken pole position and was there thanking the Tifosi for being such good supporters of him and being really good sports. I really love the Italian fans here. I know they always go for people in red, but it's really nice to have such support. Yeah. A day later, it was like, no, we don't. It's a bit like when we had the London Olympics here, and you had Jessica Ennis doing the clap thing, and everybody joined in, and then the competitor from Liechtenstein right after her did the same thing, and we all just went, no, we're not clapping along with you. No, you're not British. It was a bit like that, and it was. You're absolutely right. It was pantomime. It was comical. It was funny, and Hamilton did exactly what he should have done. I actually gained a lot of respect for him in that moment.
No, and it was good, because I don't think he would have done that a few years ago, and he wouldn't have done that when he was tied up in the quite toxic Rosberg-Hamilton team pairing. But for him to just say, first of all, his first bit of shade was fantastic and subtle, because he just said, hey, it's a great crowd here, so I don't mind. It's probably the best crowd, except maybe Silverstone. Oh, sick burn. Subtle, sick burn.
When he's driving for Ferrari in 2020, oh, how they will forget that they ever booed him. Oh, how they'll forget.
I can't do it. I can't have Lewis Hamilton going to Ferrari. That is the worst case scenario.
It'll happen, though, because he's got this whole Ayrton Senna obsession thing, and he knows that Senna would have finished his career at Ferrari if he joined them in 1995, and he wants to close. He wants that little bit of closure so that he can feel close to the memory of Ayrton Senna. He'll do it. That's how he's going to end his career.
No multiple-time world champion would ever go to Ferrari to live the life of their idol.
Come back to McLaren. They've got a Honda engine, I hear.
That's true, actually. Yeah, why hasn't he taken up that challenge? And that actually fulfills your prophecy, Ryan, from earlier on of going to a team that needs to restore its reputation. Well, hang on. It's McLaren. This is like full circle.
And because I'm a McLaren fan, I'm forced against my will to be a Hamilton fan if he comes back,
I tell you what, if Lewis Hamilton replaces Fernando Alonso at McLaren Honda someday, I will have so much respect for him. I will laugh every time he goes out onto the track and breaks down, but I will have so much respect for him.
Yeah, see, I'm the opposite. If he ends up going to Ferrari, I think that's it. I will just say that's the end of my Hamilton fandom. He's had a good career, wasn't that nice to enjoy, and then just, find another driver to get behind emotionally. No. It would be like watching your wife wandering off, holding hands with your worst enemy, and then saying, oh, you hold my hand in such a much gentler and better way than my husband. I couldn't do it. I couldn't watch it. I might even just stop watching F1. It would be a travesty. No, I'm not having it. I'm sorry. Sorry, Nick.
Yeah, well, I think if Hamilton came to Ferrari, then neither of us would be happy. So we're in agreement.
The second bit of shade was when Lewis Hamilton, in the full corporate knowledge that all the Mercedes bigwigs and bosses and board were there, just loudly went out in front of the Tifosi, bear in mind, and said Mercedes power is definitely better than Ferrari power. I think that was a good response. So I think good to both sides. Great from the passion from the Tifosi. Well done for them for getting behind their guy and really enjoying their moment of the year. But also credit for Lewis Hamilton to giving it back with a smile on his face. So then let's move on to our awards. Chris Stevens, I forgot to cut out you singing Thing of the Week, so you're going to have to sing it again.
Comment of the week.
No, not comment of the week, dummy. Thing of the
wait.
week. My wife. You're not my wife. My wife does comment of the week.
We haven't played comment of the week thing in a while. No, which one are we looking for?
Thing of the week.
Thing of the week.
Jake, who's your thing of the week?
My thing of the week has got to be Liberty Media for putting on that karting race on the start-finish straight on Thursday. And more of the same, please.
Chris Stevens, who's your thing of the week?
Daniel Ricciardo made those dummy moves perfectly.
He's a proper racer, isn't he, Ryan?
Yeah, I was more thinking of the fact that he was pulling jokes at 200 mile an hour. You know, because he likes them vulnerable, I hear. But no, I am going to go for a certain Mr. Stroll for one moment thinking he was Senna during qualifying and managing to put it on the front row because of a few penalties.
Well, it's a team effort, and his team didn't incur a grid penalty this week, whereas the Red Bulls did. So full credit to the Williams-Stroll combo for, on merit, even though some people see it as being default, on merit, being on the front row of the grid. Hey, Nick, have you or the chat room got a thing of the week this weekend?
I have got a thing of the week. My thing of the week was Sebastian Vettel driving for Ferrari on the podium, speaking Italian to the Tifosi. It may not have been on the step that everybody wanted, but I think that'll be a good memory for everybody that was there for a long time.
And I think I will give my thing of the weekend to the Tifosi because they spiced up the podium, and without them, we wouldn't have had such drama and entertainment. It was fantastic. But now the bad thing.
Oh no, you missed the apex.
Jake, who missed the apex this week for you?
It's a toss-up. Someone else is going to go for Massa, so I'm going to go for my other choice, which is the FIA for not letting them run on wet tyres when there are perfectly good wet tyres on the cars that you can put on when it's raining. We delayed for 2.5 hours because, oh no, we don't like wet tyres on a... No, the FIA, you failed. Deal with it.
Man, I was stuck in a theme park and I was getting reports of it's not started yet, and I was just really hoping they'd delay it till Saturday morning so I could watch it live. But yeah, I'm sure in the olden days they had wet tyres that could drive in the, wet.
Every F1 driver on the grid used to run karts on slicks in wet conditions. That's worse than running wets on wet conditions. Stop being crybabies. Put them out on wet tyres in a wet session. We're men. Let's do it properly.
Jake doing his best Jeremy Clarkson impression right now.
I don't care. Look, Jeremy Clarkson can be right once in his life, and that's the only thing he's right about. I'm not a sexist, racist bigot like him, but I will agree with him that wet tyres should be run on a wet track. It's as simple as that.
Yes, I hear that allegedly some of his comments have been taken by some elements of society who are not Missed Apex Podcast, SpannersReady.com, or any of its affiliates. Ryan.
Allegedly.
Well, I think it's where we've been on Pirellis. I think the Bridgestones would have managed, but I think I'm going to go for Roman Grosjean because he didn't even make it to the apex. He just got on the straight and spun. So yeah, or maybe go for Haas because Haas just like to whinge and moan about stuff. It seems
there is a real whinging culture coming out of Haas, and I don't know if it's being generated by the drivers, but it's spread to Magnussen. I can't remember him being like that before, or whether it's coming from within the team. But now Grosjean is not winning any friends, and he's getting to that Alonso toxicity point where you have to wonder: do you want him in your team, or have other teams got to the point where his reputation has just got to? We don't want someone like that who's always complaining, always blaming it on the car.
Didn't he come out in the media, though, saying that he doesn't like the the television people, because all they seem to do is show his bad points on team radio and never show any of the good side of him.
Well, he's probably not making it that hard. Chris, who missed the apex for you?
I'm also going to go with the FIA for the grid penalties that meant we only had one driver starting where he actually qualified.
Why? So the FIA for the rules or for enforcing the penalties? Because one makes you right and one makes you stupid.
Not for enforcing the penalties, but for getting us into this position in the first place.
Ah, darn. I wanted another excuse to call you stupid. I'll have to fall back on my memory of your karting.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you what. Next time I take a lesson with Bradley, and then we'll talk.
I looked at your lap times. There's no amount of lessons that are going to get you up in my league.
All right, but whatever.
Oh, sick burn there, Chris.
Nick,
Tone it down.
Nick, you've piped up. So, what was your missed Apex award this week? And do the chat room have any suggestions?
They're also going for Charlie Whiting and Roman Grosjean, but that has been covered. I'm going to go with Marcus Ericsson because he was so far in the sea that when he retired, that was actually the first mention of him that I had received the entire race. I had completely forgotten his existence.
Yep, he's pointless, and we all hate him. My missed Apex award goes to... It's not going to be popular, and I'm not doing this to be what's the word? Contrarian. I'm not doing it to be a contrarian, but it goes to Lance Stroll, and everyone is going to say yes, it was brilliant that he got up onto the front row, and it was well done for him. Fantastic. However, out of any kind of context, if you just looked at his racing performance in the race today, he bottled it in turn one. He bottled it many times trying to overtake Ocon, and any other driver on that grid would have gone for it, taken the place, or, had contact and gone out. Because
Jen, provide context, Spanners.
Yeah, but what are you going to do? What are we going to do? Are we just going to apologise for Stroll forever? Like, oh, that's quite a good race for Stroll. We can't do that.
Text my bones. He was just so frightened everywhere, wasn't he?
No, you credit Stroll for the race he did and the dog of the car that he's got.
No, we're not. We're crediting Stroll for doing well for someone who really has no business being in Formula One. Let's be honest.
Oh my God, this is so wrong.
You just said OMG. You have to censor that. You have to censor that.
Look, he got caught by Massa. He got caught.
I don't see why people bash him so much. He's actually still a fairly decent driver.
Who?
Massa.
He'll be amazing in Formula E next year.
I was going to say, he will be really good.
Isn't it sad we don't know which Williams driver is being bashed? We have to ask for clarification.
Can we clarify which terrible Williams driver? But my opinion is clear. Like I said last week, I think Williams, when it makes its next driver pick, that is them reclaiming their racing soul. Okay, fair enough. I'm not a businessman. I don't understand the sacrifices they had to make. Maybe getting Stroll on board was the only thing that made sense to be able to develop their car. But next year, they can't line up with Massa and Stroll. They just can't. Not if they want to be a proper racing team. I'm not saying they're not a proper racing team, but they're at risk. They're at risk of losing their racing soul. Where are we? Awards. A pony award.
Daddy, I want a pony. And I want it now.
Well, who wants to take the open goal on this one?
I'm going to go for Jolyon Palmer for being Jolyon Palmer in the Jolyon Palmer Hissy Fit show.
He didn't even have a hissy fit, though, did he? They said, Jolyon, we've got to retire the car. He did this. He went, oh, right, yeah. As if like, oh, okay, that went a bit longer than normal. He's not even mad at retirements anymore.
No, sorry. I'm just joshing with you. It's Fernando Alonso, isn't it? I just wanted to see what you'd do if I said Jolyon Palmer. No, it's Fernando Alonso, isn't it? Bless him.
Oh, it's so bad. And the thing is, I think now we've got to the point where he has, if we hadn't burnt his bridges before as a driver that you would want in your team, I think he definitely has now, Chris.
I mean, he's not going to be around next season, is he? That's just a given. Renault have got so many other drivers to choose from.
His choice or F1's choice?
I think Formula One's choice. Jolyon had he was given a second chance this year to show what he can do, and it's not enough. He's underdelivered.
Any other ponies?
You, Spanners.
Go on.
You.
Hang on, Chris. What do I get a pony for?
You get a pony for your Stroll comment. The racing drivers aren't brilliant immediately because they're young.
Oh, get out of it!
Context for any races.
The bar is set so low because do you know what it is? Because he's a really nice bloke. Everything he comes across on you can tell he's a genuinely nice dude. But
you don't like that. You don't like that. It makes you feel bad about yourself, or is it just all young people that you don't like?
I mean,
because
that's closer. Yeah, that's closer to the truth. Yeah,
taking a disliking to me, I can tell. I don't know if other people have caught up on it, but
Ryan, you young git.
I was going to say Haas, but is there just a permanent space pony slot for them anyway?
Fair enough. Any ponies for you, Nick?
Yes. So while we're back on the topic of terrible Williams drivers, they mentioned on the NBC broadcast that Jacques Villeneuve has actually been asked to leave the Williams hospitality area for just bashing on Stroll too much.
Oh,
so
no.
I give my pony award to him if I can.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I'm in danger of losing my presumably imminent invite to the Williams garage as well. But, okay, good luck to him. And I don't want to be a hater, but I want to see something genuine where it's good for a driver in a Williams car, not just, hey, that's quite good for Lance Stroll. All right, guys, that brings us to the end of Missed Apex. I didn't forget it. Yes, finally. Hold on.
Comment of the week.
Nick, you've marshalled the shed very well. For your money, who was the head of the shed?
Well, you want a couple of front runners, right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Quite a while ago, Evangelos Eterokleitos said that there are species of butterflies in Central America with lifespans shorter than Ricciardo's first stint.
Yeah, get off them boots. Back on the softs.
Oh, that's hard.
Hannah Hassel says that if you whinge, they will broadcast it. It's not rocket science.
It's true. They bring it on themselves.
And Rory McKay says, how sick was that? Stroll qualified P2 on merit.
I know it seems like a bit of a juxtaposition between my opinion of Stroll on the qualifying and of the race, but that's just how it fell. For you, though, who is the best chat room comment of this week?
The last one from Rory.
Say it again?
The last one from Rory about Stroll.
No, say the comment again.
Gotcha. How sick was that for Stroll to qualify P2 and on merit?
Comment of the week.
Guys, stick with this feed because this week we are going to have a lot to listen to in and around the Missed Apex world. We're going to try very hard to catch up with Joe Saywood for Inside F1. We're also going to be talking to one of the country's top lawyers to find out exactly what is going on between McLaren and Honda. No one in that happy couple is looking forward to the divorce, and I think they're going to have to squabble over who gets Lance Stroll in the settlement. Sorry, over who gets Fernando Alonso and Stoffel Van Dorn in the settlement. Yes, you have reached the targets that we were going for to get Matt Trumpets to do at least a monthly Wafflecast. We far exceeded it, and we've been working very hard on Matt's producer setup. He can now produce Wafflecasts without me, and will be doing so this week. So we've got absolutely loads coming up, and on top of that, we will be launching our very first F2, F3 support series type podcast. We are going to have Alex Goldschmidt, I believe, podcasting it with another yet to be confirmed person, but that will be appearing on the Missed Apex feed that I will point you at in the future. That will be appearing on the Missed Apex feed. Until next time, remember that wounds heal, chicks dig scars, and glory lasts forever. This was Missed Apex. We survived another week. The chat room's asking why we're not talking about Alfa Romeo Sauber. That just sounds crazy. I thought Sauber were having a Peugeot engine. That's the latest I'd heard, I think. I just lose track. I lose track of who is coming in with which engine and whether that story is from Formula 1 or Formula E. Exactly. No one's heard anything about that. I think we'll leave that to Joe.
The Formula E ones are just better.
You are like a proper Formula E fan, aren't you? Like, you think Formula E is the best thing in the world.
I love Formula E.
Excuse me, it is the best thing in the world.
It's quite good.
It's flawed, yeah, but I mean, aren't we all?
So is my face, and yet I still.
Okay. Here's the question I'll ask for you, Chris. No, here you go, Chris. If I said to you, here's this new racing series, and it's petrol as well. In fact, I think they've got a bit of a hybrid system in there. It's called Formula H, right? And it was exactly the same as it was now. Exactly the same racing, exactly the same people, exactly the same personnel. Would you still be raving about Formula E?
What you mean? If it was exactly
as it is now, but it wasn't an all-electric series?
Probably, yeah.
No, you wouldn't. It's because it's a signal of the hope of the future, isn't it? Formula E.
I mean, yeah. But I mean, I didn't get interested in Formula E because of it was the future of technology and all that. All that was very secondary to me. Now I kind of have to lead with that stuff because I am more in the media side of things now. But for me, the big grasp was just the level of racing and the competitiveness of it, and
bumper cars on narrow street tracks.
Yeah,
I'm only kidding. I like Formula E.
I like the fact that it was doing something quite unique, and plus, to be fair, Formula E bump started my career. For me. So I owe them everything.
Oh, I owe them. They kept my motorsport podcasting ticking over. It was something really interesting to grab a hold of and go with before we did Missed Apex as well. But yeah, it's exciting. But sometimes when you sit and, you've waited 2 months between the races and you go...
I mean, like I say, it is flawed. It's been worked on for season 4. But, everyone's flawed.
Everyone's flawed. Yeah, but I don't know. I love Formula 1 this season so much. I think this is one of my favourite seasons of Formula 1.
This has been a great season. I went into this season, and it was make or break for me in F1, because the last 3 years or so they've been tough to watch, and not enjoyable for me to cover. And so that was, I made my make or break choice with Formula 1 this season.
Well, Philip Allen's saying, look, F2 on a Saturday is better than a Formula E race.
No?
I mean,
F2 isn't as good as it used to be.
It's got to be better than a Formula as a race, as an actual race. It's got to be better.
The thing. Well, I mean, it depends. They're both fantastic. I love Formula 2 as well. Like, I mean, no. Actually, no. I've got to be very careful with my words here because I don't.
Do we need to take this off air?
I love watching Formula 2. I love watching Formula 2 as it is because it's just an incredible, entertaining series. But as a Formula 1 support series, it is possibly the worst thing they could have come up with.
I absolutely love the fact that now we're going to get Formula 3 back on the Formula 1 bill. Oh, it's been decades.
No, the thing is, they can brand it however they want. If the rules aren't there to make it a proper support series, it's never going to kick off. What is relevant in Formula 2 to what Formula 1 is about? Charles Leclerc is dominating the Formula 2 champion.
Yeah.
And it's nothing. It means absolutely nothing as far as I'm concerned.
Well, no, it means that we can expect to see a good driver in Formula 1 one day. That's the relevance for me.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's like Formula 2.
Last few years, look who has won GP2, and where have half of them gone? Nowhere.
Super Formula
Exactly.
E or...
No, exactly. Pierre Gasly. Well, I mean, when he won the GP2 championship, what was the chances of him being in Formula 1 were nil. Bloody Fabio Lima.
Where's he now?
Doesn't even know who that is. Jolyon Palmer won GP2. Thank you very much, Hannah, for reminding me that Jolyon Palmer won it.
He eventually won GP2.
Van Dorn had
Esteban Gutierrez.
He won GP3.
My friend.
No, Stoffel Van Dorn had to wait a year before he was allowed in Formula 1, which is ridiculous. Gasly is going along the same way. And
Sierra's won GP2.
Leclerc is great at driving.
Oh man, Hannah, I can't believe you went there by saying Jolyon Palmer won GP2. It took him 4 years to do it.
No, she's backing up my point in that it's rubbish.
Oh, I see. Oh, good.
Leclerc is great at driving a skinny downforce car with a internal combustion engine that doesn't really produce a lot of power, and on gooey tires that fall away after 10 laps. Is used to driving a 2-race format where there are so many stupid rules about it, where everyone's in the same chassis. Tell me what in that is relevant to what Formula One does.
They've managed to make it slightly relevant now in having DRS, but
they've made it slightly relevant in that it's called F2 now. Oh yeah, brilliant.
But the thing is, this is how relevant
Formula 2. It's rubbish.
This is how relevant GP2 or Formula 2 is. The fact that when both Kvyat, Bottas, Verstappen, Stroll, they all skipped it out and went to Formula 1. And to be honest, they've done pretty decent jobs of it. Where GP2 or F2 isn't the spectacle it used to be. Back when I first started watching it, it was like a load of mad axe murderers that were just like testosterone-filled teenagers. Just like they just would stop but nothing to try and win. But now it's just a bit. It seems a bit dull over the last few years.
So many drivers in there who have just been sat there for years and years.
Yeah,
years. They are ridiculous. And McLaren want to put Lando Norris in F2 next season, and that worries me. That really worries. Right now. So, F2 is the place you go if you want your career to die.
Well, in the 70s and 80s, F1 drivers would dip in and out of Formula 1 and Formula 2. So you'd get some of the backmarkers or midfielders in Formula 1 returning to Formula 2. Yeah, Romain Grosjean. I think there should be a few more of like the Esteban Gutierrez and all of those in F2. That would make it more interesting, wouldn't it? No, it wouldn't. No, it really wouldn't. No, I'm sorry. That really wouldn't. That was a naive comment of me. I'm terribly sorry.
Yeah. Formula E, on the other hand.
Yes! Formula E!
Good racing drivers.
Let's point out the fact that there are 3.5 manufacturers in Formula 1. Yeah, I said 3.5.
More than WEC. More than WEC.
9 in Formula E. Hello, there's 9 in Formula E.
11.
Yeah, there seem to be 11, and there's 3.5 in Formula 1. Hello.
Rumours about DS are to be believed.
That's where the money is. That's the paddock I want to work in for the rest of my life. Genuinely.
I do genuinely love Formula E. I think it's just.
I went into the Formula 1 paddock to do consultancy work in GP3 for one of the teams and one of the drivers a few years ago. I've never felt so disliked by people I'd never met before in my whole life. It's like,
this is what no one.
You don't even know me, and you're giving me evils like I just fell off the back of your shoe. This is completely unjustified.
I'm not
an ugly sod, but I don't like being treated like that by people who've never met me before. I went into Formula E and I was shaken hands with by the people on the gate. I'd never get that anywhere, in any paddock, anywhere. I got welcomed into the media centre. I got welcomed into the team garages. Do you want to come in and have a look? Yeah. I don't get that friendliness from anyone else. That's not just we're trying to set up a gimmicky thing. That's your personality. That's how you're marketing yourself as a series. Okay, you can say, well, they're not singing and shouting about it on Channel 5 like they should be. It's how the sport is represented by the people who are in it. I love it.
The remaining chat room people are saying you're boring, and even the dog's falling asleep in Nick's background.
I know, yeah. I'm a very, very boring person.
I must say, right, production stuff, because I would love to have this kind of chat on Missed Apex Extra on the support series stuff. Yeah. I mean, Chris, as soon as you're up and running, I mean, you and Goldie would be a fantastic, thing to just chat about the stuff in general, huh?
I'm up and running. It's just my schedule is messed up right now.
You're 12. How busy can you be? You've not even got kids. Shut up. Just squeeze it all in. Do you know what I mean? When people without kids go, I'm so busy. What you mean is I don't have 17 additional hours a day to watch Norsemen on Netflix all at once.
I'm so busy. You had sleep last night.
Well, I had sleep because my children aren't tiny and terrible like yours.
Yeah, okay. Mine are quite awful. They still bounce off the ceiling and everything.
I'm sorry. I'm a millennial who did 18 hours to be able to get what managed to do in half a day.
Right. Okay. So from a production point of view, I just want to say that I think that went very slickly, and I'm just really pleased with how everyone has kind of more and more this season gotten on board with what it takes, not just to give your opinions on a panel and mess around on a podcast, but the final end product. So people are already aware. I can see you in your mind, either firstly avoiding giving me anything to edit, which is appreciated, and B, understanding when something will have to be edited. I notice those little things you guys do for me in that respect, and I notice when you wing it out and make a decent sentence out of it instead of just stopping and forcing me to have an edit. I really appreciate those things. So I have very few notes to go on, and it's a slick production, and more importantly, it means the people who bother watching us on the live stream have something interesting as well to view, and not just us constantly going, we've messed it up, you got to start again. And if you look at the live stream, I don't know if you guys have caught what we're doing with the live stream. It's looking a little tiny bit more like an actual, we're not anywhere near like what a TV show would be, but perhaps a dodgy Channel 5 gambling channel, where we're getting close to that kind of level. And it's all because of everyone's hard work and understanding. And for some reason, you guys indulge me trying to take this seriously. And, you guys never go, who does he think he is, to my face. You guys pretty much accommodate any unreasonable demand I make. And I really enjoy it. So thank you very much for that. That went fantastically slickly. The live stream improvement has been my focus for the last couple of weeks. And I can't do that without you guys being as good as you're being. So for Nick to jump on as a newbie, and a couple of times I threw him in at the deep end and went, what do you think of this particular situation? And every time...
You did, because I'm trying to read the chat room comments.
Exactly.
But
my plan was today, let you do the chat room, chuck a couple of curveballs at you, and nothing fazed you. You're a natural at talking on the mic. As far as I'm concerned, you're welcome to jump on. In at least a Ryan capacity. I mean, that's the bar, isn't it? So,
Oh, I was going to say I'd love to be on for Singapore because, as Jake Sanson has said in the chat room, Sebastian Vettel will win.
On paper, Ferrari should have it, but I don't know.
I reckon it's a good circuit for Red Bull.
But they're not going to win. Come on.
So in Ferrari's perfect race and Mercedes have a perfect race, maybe Ferrari do have the edge, and Vettel will finish 1, Hamilton 2. However, I think it's close enough that Ferrari have still got to be right on top of the game to get a result.
Exactly. That's the thing. It is close enough that both of their guys are going to be on top of the game 100% of the time, and that's why this season is so great.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Apart from today. Today was ridiculous.
Chat room comment.
Go on, chat room comment. Oh, yeah, chat room's here. Hi.
Yeah, Paul Wright says, on paper is one thing, on tarmac is another.
Well, yeah, just Mercedes 2015.
Yeah, I need to be making tracks. I've got a very, very, very early night this evening, unfortunately. As you can hear, my voice is now dead from commentating for the last 2 days.
Yeah, so appreciate you jumping on last minute. And by the way, Goldie was on, and when you said you could make it on, we have such a nice range of people that I do really want, and everyone's good now. Ryan aside, everyone's fantastic. So Alex was very. I messaged Alex straight away and said, "Do you mind making room for Jake today? Because you were on last week." And he was like, "Absolutely no problem. When are we doing the F2, F3 thing?" So
yeah, he's my boy. I like Alex.
Thanks for you guys for understanding squad rotation and things like that. And I think we have that kind of depth. That's the only reason we're still here is because of squad depth. Otherwise, if it was just me and Matt and Chris trying to do it, we would have had loads of times where we just wouldn't have had a show. So. And
one final word from me for the chat room. We're so doing Blackadder jokes next time I'm on. I don't know
what it was is obviously we'd done what was it? We did the F1 grid as a low today. So next time it's going to be the F1 grid as Blackadder next week.
Oh yeah, we're so doing that.
Wait a minute, we did the F1 grid as a low where?
During the chat room. During the chat, we were doing which characters who from a low.
We were saying things like the Italian general was going to be Arriva Bene, Johnny Herbert and Damon Hill are the 2 English servicemen that try get out. And obviously Charles Leclerc is obviously the guy who runs the whole show.
Alonso's, I forgot his name, the German with the tank that keeps breaking down.
But we said that Toto Wolff is Herr Flick, and obviously Susie Wolff is Helga. That's just a given. It's quite funny. It's very sad and nerdy. Anyway.
That's sexism, man. You can't say that's 2017, dude.
I can't believe how sexist you all are. Goodbye.
Here's my excuse for today.
You can't buy a LOLO DVDs.
Oh,
in
Ryan,
2017.
you
Wait,
should drink with
yes,
those.
You can.
Ryan, drink with those. It's the best.
I know it is. It is amazing.
Okay, I'm getting out of this.
Right,
point.
I hope you all get run over by buses. Bye.
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 Who's left? Right, chat room. Thank you very much. Guys, I really do appreciate you stopping in. And some of you didn't talk about Doctor Who all the way through, which was really, really appreciated. Right, I'm off, I think. Oh, no, hang on. Well, I'm still doing... No, I think I'm sorted. Excellent. Goodbye. Oh, look. Look. That's how much I sorted my lighting out, is when I turn it off, it goes all crackly in the corners, look. Oh, I can put my fan on now, though, as well. It's very, very hot in here. So now you can hear the wind of my fan. There you go. Catch you soon, guys. Bye.